Red-eyed tree frogs is what Kyron's science project was about, and he was very excited and proud to present it on the morning of June 4th, 2010. Also, it was nearing the end of his second grade school year, which is also exciting to a child, even if they are an advanced student like Kyron, who loves school. He usually rides the bus, but with that morning being so special, his stepmother drove him and had planned to attend the science fair with him. A 7-year-old child's mind could never comprehend, as they are pulling out of their driveway, that they may never be pulling back in. This is Kyron's story through the eyes of strangers. Have you ever wondered what goes through a child's mind when one of the most important people in their life becomes the monster that lives under their bed? Are there signs that people miss? Or can a person change within seconds from being a loving mother to a child killer without any warning? I'm sure every possible thought has plagued Kane and Desiree's mind since that horrific day 10 years ago when their beautiful boy became one of the missing children in America that vanished into thin air. Kyron was born September 9th, 2002 to Desiree and Kane Horman. Desiree and Kane divorced before Kyron was born. Following the birth of Kyron, the parents shared custody of their infant, with their divorce being finalized the following year. Kyron spent the majority of his first 2 years with his mother. In 2004, however, things would take a drastic turn. Desiree began to experience kidney failure, brought on by an adverse reaction to a medication she had started to take. She decided to seek medical treatment in Canada and was forced to forfeit custody of Kyron over to Kane because she was unable to adequately care for Kyron. At this point, Kane took over full custody, but Desiree remained as active as she could in her son's life. Kane Horman lived in Hillsboro, Oregon, and he worked as an engineer for Intel. His job included working long hours, and he would have a hard time taking care of Kyron full time. So with Desiree's help, they found a solution. They called up a friend of theirs named Terry Moulton, who agreed to move into Kane's home to provide full-time care for Kyron. It would be helping Terry out also. It gave her and her son a place to live. Terry was a teacher and competitive bodybuilder, but had previously caught a DUI and endangerment charge in Marion County, which she later pled guilty to. The endangerment charge was due to her drinking and driving while her 11-year-old son was in the car. Child Protective Services had a case filed open on her son. James had been in the car with her at the time of the arrest, hence the interest from CPS. Being a teacher with a stained record, she struggled finding a job, and the live-in nanny job came in perfect timing. As business turned into pleasure, Kane and Terry entered into a relationship together, even though it has been rumored they had an affair years prior to Kane and Desiree's marriage falling apart. In April of 2007, Kane and Terry married. They exchanged vows in a small ceremony on a beach in Hawaii. The following month, on Mother's Day, Kane bought Terry a brand new cherry red Mustang GT. It seems Terry had hit the jackpot. A home and a new car, and didn't have to work for any of it except for that one job she was hired to do, taking care of Kyron. Their life looked pretty perfect, but for some people, perfect isn't enough to quench their thirst for more. December 8th, 2008, Kane and Terry had a baby girl. They named her Kiara. Kyron had the perfect life, or so it seemed. The family made a lot of trips to aquariums and zoos. They enjoyed vacationing on the coast, which Kyron had a great love for the beach. In 2008, the family visited Disney World, which was one of Kyron's favorite memories, according to friends and family. The Hormans are a tight-knit, loving family and enjoy doing things together. Desiree, Kyron's mom, managed to recover from her kidney failure, but struggled to get back to her life she had prior to her illness. She moved in with her parents in Medford, Oregon, and that's where she met and married Tony Young. Tony is a police detective from the same area. She never regained custody of Kyron, but was still able to be a part of Kyron's life and was able to see him on a regular basis. What happened that morning at Skyline Elementary School, which is located right next to the large wooded area called Forest Park? How can a child just disappear among a school filled with children, their families, and teachers and school administrators? How is no one seen anything? According to Terry, who said she's constantly volunteering at Kyron's school on June 4th, 2010, which was the second to last Friday of the school year, started unlike most other mornings for the Horman family. Kyron normally took the bus to school, but on this day she decided to drive him to school so that Kyron could participate in his school science fair. He had prepared a project about red-eye tree frogs and was excited to show off his project to everyone that morning. However, they would have to be there before school hours. So that morning, Terry drove Kyron to school in the truck which Kane usually drove. Terry said she thought she would have transport Kyron's project back to their home that morning, but didn't know that the science fair would be going on throughout the rest of the school day. They arrived at Kyron's school at around 8 a.m. and dropped off Kyron's backpack and coat in his classroom, then went to the school gymnasium where Kyron and the other students had set up their projects. Kyron showed his project about frogs to his stepmom and friends, and Terry snapped a picture of Kyron in front of his project. Terry and Kyron were seen by multiple witnesses during this time. They were seen by students and staff members who would later recall seeing the two around 8:15 that morning. It's important to note that Terry had her daughter Kiara with her and hung around the campus until 8:45 a.m., which is when the morning science fair was concluding for parents and other outsiders to view the students' exhibits. Class was just about to start, and then Terry left. She claimed that this is when she last saw Kyron, who was walking down the hallway towards his classroom, where the two had dropped off his backpack and coat a short time earlier. However, Kyron never made it to his first class, and his teacher marked him as absent that morning. After Terry left the school, she ran some errands around the area. First, she headed to the grocery store in Hillsboro along Northwest Embry Drive, which was where she thought she's supposed to pick up a prescription for Kiara, who was suffering from an ear infection. She found out she was in the wrong store, but had a receipt from this location timed at 9:12 a.m. She then drove to the Beaverton store along Southwest Walker Road, which is where the prescription for Kiara had actually been sent to. After departing the second store, Terry stopped at Magic Dry Cleaners in Beaverton, where she was dropping off some of Kane's work clothes. The owner later recalled that Terry came in by herself, implying that she had left Kiara in the car momentarily while she came in, but she left after a couple of minutes. From there, she stopped at a Michael's craft store in Beaverton, leaving a short time after 10 a.m. Surveillance footage from these locations would later confirm Terry's timeline, giving her known whereabouts until roughly 10:10 a.m. Terry's whereabouts for the next hour and a half remains a mystery. Terry said she decided to drive around the area since the motion of a moving vehicle seemed to help ease Kiara's discomfort, and she was suffering from an earache, so she claimed to do this for the hour and a half, driving primarily along rural routes in the PDX area. She made a phone call during that hour and a half car ride at around 10:39 a.m., but the phone call has not been confirmed. It wasn't until 11:39 a.m. that Terry arrived at her next known location, a 24-hour fitness in Beaverton, where she would regularly work out. She checked Kiara into the gym's daycare while she was working out for the better part of the next hour, eventually picking up Kiara after 12 o'clock p.m. and stopped and talked to some friends before leaving. Terry left the gym at around 12:40 and headed home along Portland's Sherlock Nook Road. She arrived home before 1 o'clock p.m. At 1:21 p.m., she began unloading photos onto Facebook. This is when the photo of Kyron at the science fair that morning was uploaded online, which showed Kyron wearing a black CSI t-shirt in front of his project. Around the same time that these photos were uploaded to Facebook from Terry's computer, she sent an email to Kyron's teacher asking when she could come to pick up Kyron's science project. Kane was returning home from work and decided to walk down to Kyron's bus stop with Terry and Kiara. They waited for a few minutes until Kyron's school bus finally came to a stop. They waited for Kyron to exit the bus, but he never did. Kane and Terry spoke with the bus driver and discovered that Kyron had never boarded after school. The driver suggested for them to call the school. Kane called the school secretary immediately, informing her that Kyron wasn't on the bus, and Terry proceeded to call 911. As they started to drive to Kyron's school to find out where Kyron was, no one at the school had seen Kyron since the science fair that morning when he was with Terry. Even though they dropped off his backpack and jacket in his classroom, the school secretary seen he was marked absent, and at 3:46 p.m., she called 911, reporting Kyron missing. At this time, Terry and Kane arrived at the school, and it was now clear that Kyron was missing, and a desperate search would begin that Friday afternoon, hours after he had last been seen. The Monmouth County Sheriff's Office arrived at Skyline Elementary about 4 o'clock p.m. that afternoon and quickly made the realization that they had already lost valuable time in the search to find the missing second grader. It had been around 7 hours since Kyron had last been seen. The search started at the school, which was located right next to a large forest area. Unfortunately, the school did not have any security cameras, so police had to base the search off from the witnesses that they could find. The school that morning had been open to the public because the science fair was going on, and the school doors had been unlocked to allow students and staff and parents easy access to the gymnasium. This meant that no one had been required to check in at the front office to get into the school. So trying to find a record of who had been there that morning would prove to be a challenge. At 5:30 p.m., a text message was sent out to all parents in the area whose children attended the school in the Portland School District. The text message read, "Kyron Horman did not arrive at home today," and encouraged anyone with information about Kyron's whereabouts of that day to contact the authorities. The search started that Friday evening as officers began conducting a grid search around the school, but the rain slowed down search efforts. The search and rescue effort wasn't able to mobilize until that evening, but would continue scouring the area around the school well onto Saturday, with a final transmission from the search team being received at 3:23 a.m. About an hour and a half after the initial search efforts stopped, police officials gathered once again. Investigators with the Monmouth County Sheriff's Office continued searching for Kyron, while volunteers and other officials continued the search around the school about 5 o'clock a.m. Tracking dogs will be brought out, searching every inch of the school and expanding outwards into the forest park throughout the day. Police focused most of their efforts on a 2-mile radius. Investigators conducted interviews with all of Kyron's close friends and family that Saturday, trying to determine if any of them had seen Kyron after his last known sighting that morning. Almost everyone that knew Kyron had an alibi. It was speculated that Kyron might have ran away, as he had been known for times being somewhat aloof at times and for being very headstrong. On a few occasions, he had walked out of class to go to the bathroom without asking permission, and Terry claimed that she had made the doctor's appointment the following Friday due to his absent-mindedness. But none of this seemed to point to the notion that Kyron might have run away from school, because he was usually a well-behaved child. If he had ran away, he had given no clues to his friends or family. While searchers continued to look for Kyron in the heavily forested region around his school on Sunday, volunteers helped Kyron's family distribute flyers with information about the missing second grader. Monday, June 7th, police returned to the school that morning, questioning drivers throughout the day and making note of those that regularly drove through the area on their way to school or work. At this point, police were not willing to label Kyron as a kidnapped child, but it was becoming quite clear that something had happened to him. He was described as a missing endangered child. The FBI was assisting in this investigation. For the first week after Kyron disappeared, his family would remain in the background of this investigation, assisting with searches and attempting to distribute flyers throughout the area. The search for Kyron carried on for over 10 days, having involved more than 1,300 searchers, both police officials and volunteers who came from all across the West Coast. By all indications, it was the largest and most comprehensive search in state history. However, on June 13th, officials with the sheriff's office announced that they were officially ending their search efforts and were transitioning into a criminal investigation. On June 15th, 2010, those that knew Kyron Horman continued to hold out hope that the 7-year-old would return home. A $25,000 reward that had been established for information leading to the child's whereabouts, which had been doubled to $50,000 by the end of the month. Investigators had begun to narrow it onto one person of interest that they believe knew more than what they had indicated and who was also the last person to have seen Kyron alive, his stepmother, Terry. Since the day Kyron was reported missing, police have viewed Terry Horman with suspicion, believing that her series of events from the day of Kyron's disappearance had several unexplained gaps. Between the 4th and 25th of June, Terry took 2 separate polygraph tests, failing the first one and walking out of another in frustration. Polygraph tests may not be admissible in court, but it's a great investigating tool, especially when a subject gets up and leaves during a test. This was viewed by police as an indicator of guilt, so they continued digging into Terry's personal life. Investigators were very interested in the time that she claimed to have been driving her daughter around to help ease the ear infection between 10:10 and 11:40 a.m. Terry claimed that she had been driving around on rural roads for about an hour, but it was impossible to verify where she had been during this time. This is a 90-minute gap. Police had even started handing out flyers with Terry's vehicle information, hoping for witnesses that had seen her that morning to come forward. That 90-minute gap would remain the focus point for investigators, even though there was no way to prove where she was or what she was doing at that time. On June 26, 2010, Kyron Horman was contacted by the sheriff's office and was asked to come in and speak to them alone. He met with sheriff officials that afternoon and was told their landscaper had came in and told them that Terry had hired him to work in their yard, and also told police that Terry had offered him a lot of money to kill Kyron Horman. According to the landscaper, Terry had invited him to a restaurant in the early months of 2010. While there, she asked him to murder Kyron and told him to make it look like a mugging. According to police, Terry told the landscaper that Kyron often carried around a lot of money, so any attack on him would look like a mugging. Terry told the landscaper that he could keep any money that Kyron had on him, which was usually around $10,000 plus a laptop he constantly kept with him. According to the landscaper, Terry's reason for the murder scheme was because Kyron was abusive and was planning to divorce Terry and taking custody of their daughter Kiara. Kyron was also told by the sheriff's office that an undercover sting was taking place at his home as they spoke. The landscaper, who is known as Rudy, and an undercover officer acting as a hitman were at their home, and they were attempting to discuss the murder plot with Terry. They offered to carry out the hit on Kyron while secretly wearing a wire. During their conversation with Terry, the landscaper kept referring back to the conversation Terry and he had months prior while at the restaurant. Terry sensed she was being set up and called police that afternoon and reported both of the men. She did not incriminate herself while in the presence of the undercover officer that day, so she was not charged with any crimes. The truth behind why she wanted her husband murdered remains unclear, or if she had asked the landscaper to murder her husband at all. No in-depth details of the happenings during the sting that day has been released by investigators. Kane was overwhelmed after being told about his wife's plot to kill him. He returned home that evening and ended up arguing with her, and later leaving with the couple's 1-year-old daughter, Kiara. Terry called 911 at approximately 11:39 p.m. in what police describe as a custody matter. 2 days later, Kane filed for a divorce as well as a restraining order for both him and his daughter, Kiara. The restraining orders were immediately granted, but the divorce itself would take years to come to an end. Terry had started a sexual relationship with a former classmate of Kane's who had participated in the search for Kyron just days after Kane left with Kiara. Terry started sending sexually explicit text messages to him, which made her seem pretty eager to start a new sexual relationship with a person whom she had just met weeks prior, if not days. In July 2010, Terry Horman had to move out of the family's home. Kane Horman and his daughter Kiara were living elsewhere and wanted his estranged wife to leave the home. And after coming to agreement in the presence of lawyers, she agreed to move out. The Mustang was not part of the eviction agreement that she and Kane worked out through their attorneys, so she could take it. Kane says he believes she was involved in the disappearance of his son Kyron. After leaving the family home, Terry Horman returned to Roseburg, where her parents lived, and before long, one of Terry's friends became entangled in the case. Her friend had been subpoenaed by the county's grand jury as one of the several witnesses that were close to Terry. She was one of Terry's workout friends from the gym. Terry and her friend had become close during the weeks after Kyron's disappearance. She also was one of the very few that stood by Terry after Kane filed for divorce. She moved in with Terry to help her in any way that she could. She felt like Terry needed someone to lean on during this difficult time. Investigators were hoping Terry had confided in her friend the whereabouts of Kyron or any information about this disappearance. Eventually, information about Terry's friend started to surface. It seemed she had been doing some gardening work for a homeowner on the day that Kyron disappeared, but according to that homeowner, she had left around 11:30 a.m. She was then reportedly unavailable for the next 90 minutes or so, not even by telephone, and did not return until 1:00 p.m. on that day. This information, plus her close friendship to Terry, caught the interest of the investigators. She willingly allowed police to search her property and vehicle and sat through hours of questioning. She believed that police were trying to persuade her to implicate Terry in Kyron's disappearance. Terry's friend and now roommate had become aware that investigators were monitoring both her and Terry's cell phones. To rectify this invasion of privacy, she purchased burner phones for both of them so that they could communicate with each other without any of their calls or text messages being monitored by law enforcement. This made her and Terry look guilty of withholding information from the investigators. In addition to the news about her friend and her close relationship with Terry, information surfaced about the months prior to Kyron's disappearance. Terry Horman sent emails to friends that blamed Kyron for the failing marriage. Terry also blamed her husband Kane for her teenage son being sent to live with his grandparents. She sent several emails to people describing Kane as being overbearing and described how he made their household toxic and unstable. It seems Terry blamed everyone else except for herself for the problems in her marriage. In June of 2012, close to 2 years after Kyron had disappeared, Desiree Young, Kyron's mother, filed a civil suit against Terry Horman, claiming that she was responsible for the disappearance of Kyron. In addition to seeking an approximately $10 million in damages, the suit was aimed at proving Terry had kidnapped Kyron. Terry tried to delay the lawsuit, but the motion was denied by a judge who allowed the suit to continue. Eventually, Those who were involved in the case were called to testify. Terry's friend, who had supported and lived with Terry for a couple of weeks following Kyron's disappearance, also was called, and her involvement in the civil trial was different. During a deposition, she refused to answer 142 questions, pleading the fifth to all of them. These included questions regarding her whereabouts on the day that Kyron had disappeared, as well as her contact with Terry that day. This caused more suspicion regarding the two. Later, many questions were answered. She had taken a deal that gave her immunity in exchange for her testimony. She admitted to unemployment fraud, and that supposedly was the reason why she refused to answer certain questions when asked. July of 2013, Desiree Young announced that she was dropping the lawsuit because she did not want it to interfere with the ongoing police investigation. Also, that same year in 2013, Terry and Kyron Horman's divorce was finalized, and he was granted full custody of their daughter, Kiara. Terry had filed for an official name change. She no longer wanted to be named Terry Horman. She wanted her name to be changed to Claire Sullivan. But on August 4th, a Douglas County judge rejected Horman's request to be known as Claire Sullivan. The judge said Horman shouldn't be allowed to change her name because it is not in the public's interest during the ongoing investigation. It's been speculated she had got the name from the murder mystery novel. Terry eventually started using the name Terry Lynn Moulton. In 2016, Terry started to speak out after her long silence since Kyron's disappearance in 2010. Terry said there was a man in a white Ford pickup truck parked on Highway 30 at the 7-Eleven near the school. He was acting very strange, and he was addressed by one of the employees because he had been pacing back and forth in front of the 7-Eleven for about an hour. The guy, I'm not sure what the entire conversation was about, but I do know from these witnesses that this man asked the employees where the nearest school was, and that the employees told him Skyline Elementary. She waited too many years to release this lead in the case, even if the man at the store was fictional. The police could not confirm nor deny the story or whether he was reported by witnesses, but it seems mysteriously strange that the truck she described was the same type and color of truck that she had been driving that day that Kyron disappeared, a white Ford pickup truck. In August of 2015, Terry Horman's roommate reported she had stolen a handgun from his safe in his Marysville, California home. She allegedly took a gun worth $950. When contacted by police, officers say she had the stolen gun in her possession. She pled not guilty. She failed to appear in court on November 17, 2015, and a bench warrant was issued for her arrest. Sacramento Police Department said Monday, on July 3, 2016, Terry was pulled over for speeding in Sacramento. When officers saw she had an arrest warrant for failure to appear, and they confirmed it with Yuba County officials, and she was taken to the Yuba County Jail where she was booked. On July 4th, after she was booked, she made bail. Her next court hearing was December 16, 2016. Terry Horman moved out of Oregon. In October of 2016, Terry changed her Oregon's driver's license to an address in Sacramento, California. Then Terry was accused of domestic violence. A Sacramento man who described himself as her domestic partner filed for a temporary restraining order against her on November 28, 2016. The plaintiff said that he fears for his life. I don't even know what she's capable of, he said. The plaintiff said Terry held a knife to his face and told him something is going to happen to you or your family. The Sacramento man has filed a restraining order which was scheduled for December 16, 2016 in Sacramento County Superior Court, which was the same day Horman was to appear in court on the gun and failure to appear charges. Terry was also arrested on December 24, 2016, just outside of San Francisco. She was booked into the Marion County Jail for taking a vehicle without the owner's consent. Prosecutors in the Marion County District Attorney's Office reviewed the evidence and determined they could not prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. No charges were filed. Court records show Terry remarried in Nevada on March 17, 2018. After all the time and hard work authorities, search and rescue teams, and volunteers have and are putting into the disappearance of Kyron, unfortunately, there has been no factual leads or signs of him. The investigation continues even after 10 years. Kyron's parents will never give up hope. This hope keeps them going. It gives them a reason to get up every morning. Kyron Horman has organized a yearly event called Kyron's Car Show. All proceeds from the event go to the foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping families of missing children. Kyron's mom remains as one of his greatest advocates. Desiree Young, Kyron's mom, worked with true crime author Rebecca Morris to publish a book titled Missing Boy: The Search for Kyron Horman, hoping it would put pressure on the last person to see Kyron 10 years ago, as she claimed she was watching him walk to his class. His stepmother, Terry, which has never been charged in Kyron's disappearance. The county sheriff's office remains just as dedicated to this investigation as they were 10 years ago. Unfortunately, the proof necessary for an arrest and prosecution just wasn't there. Not all cases brought before the grand jury result in an indictment. The reminder of Kyron's disappearance was initially at Skyline Elementary, but was moved because it was thought to be an emotional distraction for students. The wall moved to the Valley Fire and Rescue Station on Skyline Boulevard for a year, and then to Extreme Edge Gym off from Northwest Cornell Road in Beaverton, a gym where Kyron's father, Kane, frequently worked out. In 2016, the mementos were taken down by employees at the gym in an effort to clean up the tattered items. The weathered stuffed animals, signs, and other items that looked bad. Even though Kane had okayed the items to be thrown away, Kyron's mother was heartbroken. She was not notified until the items on the wall of hope was disposed of. She, like any other mother, would have loved to keep some of the items that was placed around it because they were placed there out of love for a child, her child. The Federal Bureau of Investigations is still searching for Kyron, and the case is still very active, and if anyone has any tips, they would like to hear from them. Here we are, 10 years have since passed. Kyron disappeared. Even the largest search of Oregon's history turned up nothing. Where do we go from here? Kyron Richard Horman was born on September 9, 2002. Kyron is a white male with brown hair and blue eyes. He is 3 feet, 8 inches tall and weighs 50 pounds at the time of his disappearance. Kyron was last seen wearing a black t-shirt with the letters CSI in green and a handprint graphic on it, black cargo pants, white socks, and black Skechers sneakers with orange trim. He wears metal-framed glasses. Kyron Richard Horman has been missing from Skyline Elementary School in Portland, Oregon since June 4, 2010. He was last seen the morning after attending a science fair at the school. If you have any information concerning this case, please contact the local tip line at 503-261-2847 or your local FBI office or the nearest American embassy or consulate. Subscribe to our channel for future updates on Kyron's case and like us on our Facebook page, The Missing Truth. Remember, some sort of truth remains in a lie.